So I'm going to share a couple of things in the chat too while we're thinking. This is a website that has a lot of different which does not belong and why. Don't get lost in it right now, but it's there as a resource. Yeah, it's a very open task. It's inviting. It has wide access. And you can start with anything. When we played today, I started with some words, 3-letter words, and then we went to numbers, and then it could be anything from there. And also we're talking about intentional moves that we can use to drive the discourse within a game like that. Danielle, you got something for us?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, so
all right.
We could do this a couple of ways because it's a small group. You could just tell us what the 4 items are. We could write them down and play that way, or you could share a screen.
This one I kind of have to share my screen for.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. Are you looking at me? Yeah.
Right now we're looking at you. Yep.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? That's not what I want.
Oh, this is great.
Okay, so this is my document camera, which has been my saving grace at home teaching math, by the way. So which does not belong and why? So there's graph 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay. And if you want, take a minute to look at it, right? We'll do that first.
That's always important, right? And that's a way to build in what we talked about with the individual think time.
Think time is something I'm always working on.
Good.
So take a minute to look at this and see if you can figure this out. Have you guys had enough time to think of something that does not belong? All right.
So.
Okay, so I can't see Rachel. So Rachel, are you there? I just want to make sure I'm including her. Oh, there she is. No worries. So if you would like to share, if you guys raise your hand, that might be the easiest and I can call on you. All right, Rachel, which do you think does not belong and why?
I thought 3 didn't belong because it didn't start at the origin of the graph. It started with some value of y. I believe it's been a long time since I've looked at graphs like this.
Great job.
Correct.
Yeah, so that is correct. And Molly, can you repeat some of Rachel's reasoning for that?
Oh boy, see, I wasn't here in the beginning and I didn't know that was I was ready to answer the question. Yes, I can. Yep, I'm there.
I'm trying to catch on to this. Okay.
Well, this is good because I didn't hear the beginning, so this is helpful to me. I think that Rachel said that it was the only one that didn't start at the origin. So it started at some number in the positive numbers above the origin.
Wonderful. So this is the only one that starts up here and doesn't start at the origin. All right. Does anyone have a different one that does not belong and why? Molly?
I was thinking number 2 because it's the only one that's a curved line instead of made up of straight lines.
Yes. And can anyone add anything onto that? Is there anything else?
I can add, I don't know if this is adding, you tell me, but I liked Molly's thinking. I had a similar thinking because I was thinking that number 4 doesn't belong because it's pointy and the other ones are not pointy. So I feel like it has something to do with what Molly was looking at as well, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that I was thinking along that line that number 2 is curvy and the others all have straight edges. Is there any other one that you see? This one's a little, I tried to hide one more thing in there. Sonia, do you see anything that's different that one doesn't belong?
I was trying to figure out why number 1 didn't belong, and I have not come up with an answer yet.
That's okay. Did anyone see how number 3 doesn't belong in a different way? Mike?
I did. Well, I noticed that number 3 only has 1 arrow and the other
Yeah.
ones all have 2 arrows, which I thought was weird because my teacher always tells me to always put the 2 arrows on the line. So I'm confused.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Nice job. So in that case, this could be a scenario of someone that's babysitting and they charge a certain amount and then $30 to show up because the kids are completely crazy, and then they charge $10 an hour after that. So you wouldn't put the arrow on the other side. But that's great reasoning.
I still don't know why number 1 isn't there. Like, I'm having trouble figuring out the number 1 too, or what.
So am I. I was picking them up, and the one, yeah, you could say that number 1 is a line. It's the only one that's a line, really. It's linear, and because the other one is a ray. So you could say number 1 is a line.
Or you could say number 1's the only one that's proportional.
Yeah,
right?
you could say it's constant proportionality. Exactly what we're teaching right now.
Yep. So
anyway.
It's interesting. This is a very open game, and it's good to remember that it's our job to keep it open. Now, when these are designed, as Danielle was at pains to do and did very well, each of the ones she created had a way for it to be special, right? But I don't look at this game as there's 3 or 4 things in my head I want students to tell me. You can, it depends on what your goals are. When I do it, I really want to know, what do you see? And anything goes and everything has value. So all the things that were brought up were wonderful. And if a student tells me that number 4 doesn't belong because that y-axis line's a little bent, I say, wonderful. That
exactly.
That counts. That's honored reasoning, as long as it's justified. If they say number 2 doesn't belong because it makes me feel sad, that counts. If they say that number 1 doesn't belong because the arrows are further away from the line, that counts. It's about what they notice, and this is assessment. This tells me what they see when they look at this. There's what I expect them to see, there's what I think they see, and then there's what they actually see. So, it's good to think about it open like this. And as you do structures like this, students learn over time to look for the math. And I can always question about the math, because I think for 7th grade especially, which is what Danielle teaches, the fact that number 1 is the only proportional relationship, and I can justify why, is really important. So if students didn't pick that out, I would ask them about it and maybe have them, what kind of relationship could it be, where you have 0 of something and 0 of something else, and then you have more of that something and more of something else. This is key elements of proportional reasoning. So those are just some thoughts, but it was wonderful. You came up with this very fast, and it was interesting. It gave me a lot to think about. So.
Thanks. I'll stop sharing this so that people can. There you go.
Perfect. Thanks. Does anybody else want to give this a try, or you don't have to? I'm just opening it up to see what I noticed as you're thinking about the question I just asked and didn't allow you to respond to. I'll say some more. I noticed that Danielle used repeating. Did you use repeating, Danielle, or revoicing?
I used I forgot what it's called. I had where I did do a repeating, but I also asked them to add on, like to give more.
Yeah. So you were very intentional, and it's a weird moment. After a statement is made, there's this moment where you kind of have to say to yourself, and I saw Danielle doing it, what move would make sense here? What move could give me a little more discourse, a little more engagement, a little more assessment, and you try stuff. It's not like there's a recipe for it. So, all right, now I'm ready for the answer to my questions. Anybody want to try this, or do we want to do other stuff?
I'd like to hear more of what you have to share.
Yeah. Okay. So with these talk moves or these discourse moves, again, I sent something in the chat that has a little more information to help sort of grok what they are. And what I would say is, whether you're a teacher teaching or whether you're facilitating teachers as a coach, to really choose 1 or 2 that you want to be intentional about. And not only think about doing it, but think about, what is the purpose behind it? What is it going to get me? What is it going to get me and my students? How's it going to affect discourse? And then it has to be a lot of experimentation. But if we just think about it and say, that's great, I would love to do that, but we don't work day to day to practice with it, it won't happen. It's a long road to develop these as a sort of reflexive part of my practice. But boy, I'll tell you, it couldn't be more valuable. And the last thing I'll say about these moves before we move on to some other math is my number one rule for myself with these, and when I help teachers, is keep them positive.
Yes.
Discourse in the classroom is an invitation to a positive human experience. As soon as it becomes something else, you're not getting what you really want as a teacher. It is an invitation to a positive human experience, meaning we as human beings want to engage in discourse, but it has to be safe. It has to be engaging. I have to know as a learner that I can get something out of it. As soon as I call on Danielle and ask her to repeat what Sonia said, because I know Danielle wasn't listening, it's not positive anymore. So I just wouldn't recommend that. We all have done that, I'm sure, at different times. But it's much more better to invite people. Who would like to share? Who heard what Danielle said? Who can add on? Who agrees? That kind of thing. All right.
Can I ask you a quick question
Yeah,
then?
of course.
And you might have said this earlier. So you wouldn't invite, like the kids who aren't participating for whatever reason, did you talk about that? And maybe I'm
Not explicitly, no, but it's a good question. Everything is a dance over time. So in the beginning of the year, let's say, right when I'm getting to know kids or when you're getting to know kids, I would be observing and I would be offering and I would be inviting. And for the first period of time, I would allow the confident students who have discourse practice and are ready to share, I would allow them to model for the other kids who are a little more reticent. And what I'm showing them is it's safe. When I ask you to talk and you actually do, I'm not going to then tell you no or put you down or, I want them to know I have their back. That's very important. Over time, I'm hoping that those students would come out. I use a lot of reading body language. So if I ask for something and there's one of those quiet students, they'll tell me with their body if they really don't want to be involved. And sometimes they'll tell me with their body or their face that they do want to be involved, but they're not going to ask. And then I'm going to ask them. So there's all these subtle cues. Over time, I'm trying to bring them in, yes, but I'm not rushing it. I first want them to trust me, then I want to keep inviting them. Over time, many of those kids will come in, and then the kids that don't, if the kids by November, there's those kids that still won't take part in the discussion, then I'm going to probably go one-on-one and talk to them about how I really want to hear from them. I want to hear from what they have to say, what would they like to share, that kind of thing. So it's all these different moves together. Rachel?
Thanks.
I have to go in a second, but the reason I signed up for this is because I have found this year that I have children who want to participate, but they aren't really participating appropriately. Like this kind of example, there isn't a wrong answer, but like if I found if I do number talks or quick images, they're guessing and it's clear that they're guessing, and it's so important to get all the ideas on the table. And I feel, and I don't know if this is like doubting this is like me doubting them. So that's kind of negative, but it's like, it doesn't feel like they're really doing the math. They just want to get an answer in the answer box. And when I've tried having them listen to someone and revoice what they're saying, do you know what I mean? Like to kind of tease out the real thinking, which is the point. Yep. It doesn't seem to make a difference. Do you know what I mean? It feels like it's more important to them to say something than to say something that really builds on the conversation or contributes their thinking, if that makes sense. And I'm not quite sure how to deal with that without being like, don't talk, because I don't want to say that, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, I will say one thing, that these discourse moves and building discourse in any community is difficult. It's never easy. There's always difficulties and you have to move and shift. And then in the virtual world, it's even more, there's more difficulty added to it. I want to hear what others would say to Rachel. What I would say would be, do you ever talk to them about what you want to hear from them? Do you ever tell them what kind of responses you need? Sometimes it's good to discuss sort of the ground rules of discourse of what you're looking for. Like I might tell kids, I'm not looking for the right answer. I could probably figure that out myself. What I'm always after when I ask you questions is, what do you think? I want to know what you're thinking, right or wrong. That's what I'm after. That's what I want you to share with me. Don't worry about right and wrong. We'll get there. I have those conversations. I also have conversations about guessing. I say, why is that your answer? And if they're I might even say, are you guessing? Are you just throwing stuff out there? And then if they're honest with me and say, yeah, mister, I just wanted to say something, then that allows me to say, well, why are you doing that? What else could you do? What would be fruitful? Are you doing, do you think I just want to hear your mouth moving? Because that's not what I'm after. These are my values, and this is what I really want from you. I want to know what you think, whether you're sure about it, whether you're not sure, anything. So sometimes that transparent back and forth about values and expectations can help. But I'm sure there's, probably 10 other things that you could be doing. So does anybody want to add on to what I've shared or suggestions for Rachel? Go ahead, Danielle.
I have one thing that I do at the beginning of the year is I go over all of those expectations, and then we do these things called math minutes in my classroom, just to practice their skills. And every day a student is a new teacher for the math minute. So they come up and they can see what they can learn how to question the other kids. So they're learning the strategies themselves. That's as excellent. Kids.
Yeah.
And I have kids that never ever participate, and they want to be like, they always want to have their name picked to be the math teacher. So
yeah,
every day I have a new student at the front of the room, and it's only 5 minutes long. It doesn't take that much time. But I've been hearing them using those same questioning strategies, or they'll say, oh, are you just guessing? You're like the kids saying to the other kid, are you just guessing? And it really takes the heat off of me, and so I think that's kind of a fun way to practice. You could also do practicing, like getting into groups in your class and pretend someone's a teacher, and you're practicing those strategies with them just to make it more fun and lighthearted. So that's just an idea.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'm so sorry I have to go now, but thank you so much.
No problem. Good luck.
Sorry for answering my question. I have to leave. If anyone else had an idea, I wish I could hear them.
We're here to learn together. It's great. Good luck with everything.
Bye, Rachel.
Bye.
So I will make one more note, because, students that are guessing like that, it's like, think about it from their point of view. They're playing a game called Talking in Class that is different from the game I'm asking them to play with me. Like, they're bringing these expectations from wherever they've been, that talking in math class is giving some answer so that you've given an answer. And I've got to change their mind about that. I have to tell them somehow over time through voice and action that my class is not about that. That's not how we do discourse here. We have different values. And you can't expect them to just always get that through the ether. Sometimes really we need to talk to them about it and say, this is what this class is about when we talk, how we talk. So the other aspect I wanted to bring into this session is, we've talked about discourse moves, which can be used at any time in any lesson. They can be used every day. Anytime we talk to students, they can be used. The other thought I had about discourse that's really important is how the discourse is structured and embedded within a task experience. So, I'm not sure we have enough time to engage fully in this task. So right now I'm trying to make teacher decisions of how we're going to spend our time. Let's just go for it and we'll see where we get. We may not finish this task, but it's okay. It's called crossing the river, and there's a lot of crossing the river type of problems, right? But here's this one. I'm going to present it. I'm going to read it through, and then I'm going to ask you to just take a few minutes to just think about it. Consider the problem, what it's asking, and how you might approach the problem. Okay, this is individual time, and this is private think time as well. And then after that, we'll come together and share some thoughts about what we notice or wonder in the problem. 4 adults and 2 children need to cross a wide river. They found a rowboat with oars by the shore, but there is a weight limit, and the boat can hold 1 adult or up to 2 children. There is no rope to pull the boat when empty. Everyone in the group is able to row the boat, and your job is to show how you would plan to get everyone across the river. So take a few minutes to think about, approach this problem, think about what questions you have and what representations you might use. Okay, in about 30 seconds, I'm going to ask us to come back together again. Okay, if I could ask everybody to pause in your work and your thinking, come back together with everybody. And so it's an interesting problem. Does anybody have any questions about the problem that they want to ask? Okay. Does
Yeah, I don't know how to
anybody?
do it. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And so
That's right.
can the one adult carry a kid or no, just one adult on that?
So that's a good question. What do you all think?
No,
Why not, Danielle?
because it can only carry one adult or up to 2 children. So if you had an adult and a child, it would be too heavy, I believe.
Which is what's confusing me because I can't figure out, I'm dropping somebody over there, but I can't get them back without, I don't know.
Good. Well, to reiterate, we're not at the point where I expect everybody to be done with the problem. So that's okay. And we can figure it out together and on our own. What I really want to check in on at this point in the problem solving is, what is it that we're having to make sense of? And Molly, you're bringing up one of the key parts of this problem that we have to make sense of, which is, what is this weight limit all about? And how does it affect some sort of response to the problem? So Sonia, do you agree with Danielle's assessment about the weight limit when she brought up the word or? Oh, sorry, you're muted. It's
I
okay.
agreed with that. It was one adult or up to 2 children. It could be one child or 2 children,
Okay.
not
And
a
that-
child.
And that squares with what you were saying, right, Danielle?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So who can be in the boat? Give me one scenario of who can be legitimately in the boat and not sink it.
2 kids.
We could have 2 kids. What else can we have?
One adult.
1 adult.
1 kid.
We could have 1 kid in the boat by themselves.
Yep.
Okay. And so what do you think about this, Molly? Are you buying this, that these are the 3 scenarios? Could we have a kid and an adult together in the boat?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, what are your thoughts at this point, having heard from others?
Can hold 1 adult or up to 2 children. What if it's a small adult? Weight limit wise, like in it, the kid would, like it would match up if there was a weight limit. That's what I'm thinking.
So that's interesting, right? We don't know any of the weights of these children or adults, and those aren't uniform measures. The only measure we have to go with in the problem is the way the weight limit is stated. Very interesting. So this comes to a problem-solving decision moment. What can we assume, and what does it make more sense to follow from the problem? So what do you guys think about this? Who can weigh in on this weight limit thing?
Well, because there is no weight, like what I did is for each adult, I represented it with an adult with a rectangle, and then the child is a square, and then the two squares would add up to an adult. So in the boat, only one, so they're not taking into consideration if you're a heavy adult or a light adult. So in
Who's
this problem, whoever wrote this problem was not taking into consideration. So if they had some weights on there, then you could think about it. But in this case, I think I'm assuming that only one adult can go in the boat. They can't share with a child. That's from reading this.
So what do you think about that, Molly? Danielle's given us some of her rationale, some of her assumptions, and she's justifying it through the problem because of what she doesn't know about weights. So what do you think about that? Could you be comfortable with that, or does it still bug you out?
It still bugs me, but where I'm at. But
That's why
Danielle knows me, and I'm kind of a difficult person like this.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, there's a lot going on here. There's the things we wonder about, which matter, in an application problem. And then there's, part of problem solving is knowing how to establish the parameters of the problem as given. So we're gonna keep going here and keep thinking about this. The other aspect, which I think Danielle brought up, is that in this phrase, and the boat can hold one adult or up to two children, the word or is a mathematically operative word. It has specific meaning, linguistically and mathematically, that matter. So it can hold one adult or up to two children. And if we dissect that in the linguistics, it's hard to rationalize unless we take that or out, that we could get one of each.
Okay.
So that's important. It's very slippery. It's written to be slippery in a way, and we can reflect on that when we're done with the problem. What else have you had to make sense of in the problem that you think is important besides the weight limit? Anything else that you've had to make sense of?
That you can't leave the boat on the other side without a person.
Why not?
You have until you get everybody over there. You can't leave the boat over because there's no rope. So since there's no rope, you can't bring the boat back by itself. Right.
So that's interesting. This sentence, there is no rope to pull the boat when empty. Danielle says, if we get half the party over, we can't just leave it somewhere. We'll never get it again. So that's interesting. We've had to make sense of that. Now, raise your hand if you had to struggle through what Molly was describing, which is, I can get some people over there, but then it's hard to get back and forth and get everybody over there. Raise your hand if you've had that experience anywhere during this problem. Good, good. All right. Well, let me ask you this. How many people think that they have a way at this point to get everybody across? Does anybody feel like they have a reasonable way to do it without breaking our rules of the problem? Not yet.
I haven't finished it yet.
Okay. So I'm going to give us, okay, so I dropped this problem in the link. So when I go on to the slide, if you want to refer back to the actual verbiage in the problem, we can do so. I'm going to propose we take a couple more minutes to tinker. Now, hold on, I'm going to say a couple of things, so don't go away from me quickly. We're going to, a couple more minutes to tinker. I'm also going to put up some extension questions for you to think about that I think may help. All right. And lastly, I want to talk about modeling and offer some things, because Danielle said she used some shapes to model. Some of you might have used arrows. You may have used letters, right? And I also, like right here at my desk, I have all these pens and pencils, and I can use these as models as well. Or if I didn't have these, I could write little strips of paper that say child, adult, child, adult. Anything that's going to help you start to tinker with this problem, I invite you to do. And sometimes this problem has movement in it. So sometimes moving models can really be helpful to figure out how I might move these people across the river. Sound good? Couple more minutes?
Mhm.
All right.
Sounds good.
And then we'll talk more. So I'm gonna propose some other questions for you to think about, which are here, but you work from wherever you wish. So at this point, I'm going to invite you guys to talk amongst yourselves as if you were a group of learners at a table in a classroom, and just talk about your approach so far, what you think you've made sense of, and also what still doesn't make sense to you and you're wondering about. So go for it.
Well, it's a lot of moves to get them all over to the same side. Do you guys feel it? I had 13 moves.
I did it with once he said use something, I did it with forks and spoons, and I did it, and I didn't record everything, but now I'm trying to go back and figure out what I missed in my, like I should have recorded it when I did it, and now I'm lost because
I had to do these like arrows that look like this.
Yeah.
It's very sketchy, and then I had my little people, my children.
I was trying, like,
Did you try?
Started
What
with
did you use, Tanya?
was getting lost. So yeah, moving to pens and pencils really helped. And then I could kind of write down the pattern, and then I tried it again and actually counted. And that helped. But yeah, the models really helped me make sense of the problem.
How many trips did you find that it might take? Did you start to ask that question? How many did you get?
I got 17.
Okay, so this is wonderful. So you guys are deeper into the problem now, and it sounds like there's some overlap on how this might work. It sounds like some of the moving models helped. Where it is hard to keep track of. Now in the classroom, this is ideally investigated with 2 people, and that way you have a team partner that can record while maybe you move, but you guys are doing great in short time in this virtual setting. So we have 13, we have 17 trips it might be. Let me ask you this, who do you send first? Let's see if that's the same, the way you all did it.
I sent 2 children.
I sent 2 children as well.
So you guys have common thinking. So you sent 2 children, then who comes back?
One child.
And then what?
Then
An adult.
Then an adult goes over.
Yeah.
Okay. That's 3 trips if we're counting them as one way. And then what?
the other child goes back.
So that's 4 trips. Now at this point, what have you achieved towards our goal of getting the whole party across the river? You've done 4 trips. What have you achieved?
You've gotten one adult.
One adult, yeah.
You've gotten 1 adult, right?
Mhm.
So do you think if we take that same structure again, we could get another adult across?
Yep.
So then if there's 4 adults and 2 children, how many trips should it take to get everybody across? Can we think through it from here based on what we know about the pattern thus far?
So you could make like a proportion.
Possibly, what would it be?
Well, I'm not quite sure yet, but I was just thinking.
Well, what's a general, we're running out of time and I don't want to keep you late. Well, I'm already almost keeping you late. What's a generalization that we can make that we've learned so far in this short discussion? What's something that we know, anything about the problem that can help us solve it?
Took four trips to get 1 adult across, I think we said.
Do you agree, Danielle and Sonia, with that? So this is a huge generalization. It's verbal, and we could write an expression for it or possibly a proportion, but right now it's verbal, meaning it holds ideas. So we believe that it takes 4 trips to get 1 adult across the river, right?
Right.
So maybe if there were 2 adults and 2 children, I wonder how many trips it would take for that.
Well, the thing is, it would take this set of 4 moves and then another set of 4 moves, but you still have the 2 kids over on the first side, so they have to then cross.
Interesting. What if there's just 1 adult and 2 kids? When you do those 4 moves to get the adult across, do you guys agree that at that point, after 4 trips, the adult's across, but Sonia says the kids aren't? Is that true? So if there was 1 adult and 2 kids, would it take then 5 trips? That's what I think I hear Sonia saying.
Mm-hmm.
Can anybody, does that make sense, Molly or Danielle?
I think
That
so.
Okay. So I'm going to wrap us up, but we're pretty much there. I'm going to leave you guys to think about this problem a little more. I'm simply going to wrap with this. Consider stepping out now of the math. And I'm sorry we didn't have more time to really go through it because it's a great problem and doing math is fun. Stepping out of the math, think about the organization of the problem, what I might have been doing in the presentation that was intentional for discourse. So we started by reading it, you had some time to think. Then I brought us together to sort of touch base on what we're making sense of and what we aren't. This is a very intentional structure that can be used for any good problem. It's not to figure it out at that point, it's just to say what's making sense and what isn't. Then more individual time, then some group time, then more whole group time at the end. Anything else that you saw me being intentional about in what I was doing as playing the role of teacher?
Just making,
Acknowledging that I was kind of confused and that was all right. Like, I mean, in the beginning, I didn't really know where we were going with this.
I was totally cool with that.
Yeah.
You know, my goal is that not that you figure out the answer. My goal is that you engage with me. And that's genuine. That's just what I'm interested in, you know, and then we'll figure it. I know we'll figure stuff out from there. So that's a good note. Anything else?
And then just giving everyone a chance to share their thoughts. Making sure everyone has a turn.
Yeah, so attending to equity. So these are all aspects of building discourse. And if this is done more and more intentionally every day, it grows within a community. I would dare to say even online. It's not easy by any stretch, but it can grow. That equity, keeping everybody in the discussion, means that I have to try to keep everybody's understanding in my head. So I'm sort of weaving confirmations and questions between the different things you guys are thinking about. And that's very intentional as well. So good. The whole thing in the beginning was wonderful, because think back now, if we had somehow ignored the weight limit, or if we allowed an adult and a child to ride together, my question, we don't have to answer it, this is sort of rhetorical, is what would that have done to the math problem? So sometimes when things are not making sense, assumptions we can make actually make the math problem less meaningful. They make it less rigorous and interesting, less of a puzzle. So that's something to think about, but it's also to be wrestled with as a mathematician every time I see a problem. I'm asking myself, what can I do? What can't I do? What are the parameters, So, anybody want to say anything as we break up that you're taking away from this session? What are you thinking about? What was useful to you? Or what do you want to try to activate, think more about? Any piece of what we did here today?
I think the discourse moves are really going to be helpful in just thinking about the things we say that can help with the student discourse, and just being more aware of our part in that. Good.
It also made me think about when I call on kids when they're not listening. So
Yep.
it was really helpful for you to bring that up. So just
Good.
knowing that, don't just call on a kid because they're not listening, right? And engage them in a different way, because it's embarrassing and it's more negative. So just trying not to do that.
Well, we're two of a kind, so I've learned that by experience. So trust me, I've been there. I think the operative question again is, what am I getting out of it, and what are they getting out of it? What's the productivity of it? And if there isn't the productivity that I feel like,
right?
Yeah,
it's just funny because I haven't heard that in 20 something years of teaching, right? So I just haven't thought about it.
Hey, this is
That's
why it's
kinda
so
cool.
great to collaborate together, because you can hear new stuff.
I kind of wish I got here for the earlier part, but that's all right. I got a lot out of the second half of it.
Good.
Can I ask you a quick, and I know we're going over, so if anybody,
Yeah.
I can ask this after if you want, but do you use like the crossing, any kind of like problem solving? Do you see that as happening daily in your math class? And I don't know like what your background is, honestly. I don't know where you're coming from, but is this just something, the questioning, I see how that's happening. I'm just curious.
It depends. It's a hard question to answer because it depends on so many things. Ideally, yes, I would want problem solving to not be every day. There's nothing in teaching that's every day, except that I talk to my kids every day.
Yeah.
But as far as the types of activities, it's hard to do anything every day, and it's not actually ideal. But I would like to have as much problem solving in my teaching and learning as possible. Now, what are the restrictions? My students, what their practice is, where they're at, and how to build up to that. I taught in New York City, and so very urban environment. And I had to spend a lot of time just try to get kids to understand that I was actually there for them and that there was a reason for them to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Other difficulties are curriculum and administration. So you may have any one of those variables pushing against. I think it's important to stand in your own value. If you see the value in that problem solving experience for kids and you know why the time is worth it. I'm a big fan of the math practice standards.
Yeah.
And you can't build the math practice standards without problem solving. So that's part of my value. It also, as I tried to show today, it supports discourse in so many ways. So, how much to do it is a big question. I think the better question is, how much am I doing it now? And how much do I want to be doing it? So if you're problem solving like this once a month now, could you do it twice a month?
Right.
If you're doing it once a week, could you do it twice a week? If you're doing it 4 days a week, then you don't need to do it more. But it's like, it's how does it fit in? And again, to really reflect, it's not just, it might be cool, so I'll do it, to reflect on what am I after? What are the purposes? And if my administrator comes to me and says, you're behind on the curriculum, and I say, yes, but I'm problem solving, you want to be able to say, and this is why. and come in my room and see that my kids are talking to each other. They're taking risks. They're building math practice. They're arguing. They're using different representations. They're feeling more confident about being in my room. And if you can weigh that in, then I think it's
Right.
huge. So is that helpful at all? It's a big question you're asking.
That is a big question. I mean, it's a good answer. Yes, that's kind of the answer I was hoping to hear. And it's, working with teachers and encouraging them to maybe try doing something like this once a month or something to get them doing it maybe more than they're doing, and getting myself to do it more than I'm doing, and understanding that the confidence it can build in the kids that are not confident right now. It could be helpful. It's an entry point for them. And I just keep looking for tasks like this, not just like this task, but like thinking tasks that lets everybody in.
Yeah. Yeah, the trick with teachers and ourselves is just the same as with kids. If they can do it and have a positive experience with it, they'll do it more.
Right.
So the trick, in a way, if it's a trick, is to get a teacher to step out and have that experience, or myself to do that and see, wow, that was worth it. That's what happened to me. I started doing problems like this years ago, and I just said, wow, I have to keep doing more of this, and I have to fight for it. But, oh, bye. Take care, Sonia. It was nice to work with you.
Yeah.
Bye, Danielle.
I'm still listening to Molly because I just
Because
Oh, okay.
I always have questions at the end, like, oh my
I
gosh.
have one really quick question.
Yeah.
So the practice standards, I've always used that as a grading point for my kids too, like the practice standards. And they took them off our plate this year. So we can't even pick those as a grade. We only can pick off of 5 essential standards for the whole entire school year to give our, and so I just like that I heard that you like the practice standards because they're so important.
They're essential.
Yeah, they're essential, but they just told me they're not essential and I can't grade my kids on those. So it's kind of sad.
Well, listen, here's the thing. They're essential whether you grade your kids on them or not.
I know. And
They're
I use them all the time
because they're essential, and then the grading thing is a whole nother thing. So
I know. I like to show them though how they're growing with their practice standards, but it's okay.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
It's all right. Well, thank you. I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, I do have to jump off, but it was lovely to work with both of you. I wish you luck, and I hope to see you again.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take
Bye.
care.